Let's go to the Phoenix Suns. 52.5 at PointsBet. There's a 53.5 at Superbook, one of the sharper books. A plus 105 on the under at FanDuel for 53.5. And a 54 at Circa. So if you want to get all the way up to 54 on the Suns and take an under, you can do that. If you want an over, PointsBet's your best bet at 52.5. Brandon, what's your projection, and do you have a best bet on this team?
Okay, so here's where I'm at on the Suns. I have the projection at offense 5th, 9th on defense, and that puts them at 46 to 54 wins, which is a lot lower than I was expecting. The teams that they are similar to are teams like the Suns, not last year, but the year before, the Jazz last year, which I think is going to be a team we're going to hear them often compared to, and that is a bit perilous. Teams like from 2 years ago, the Bucks or the Clippers or the Heat the previous season. That was the bubble team that went to the finals. Interesting. These teams that their similarity scores come out is they're winning like 48 to 52 wins, which is not great. But if you listened sharply to that list, we had a champion in there, the Bucks. We had a bunch of deep title runs. The profile is there. This is the same team we already know that won a lot of games the last couple of years. It's the same team that they've changed as little as anyone by roster. They basically ran everything back by accident. They tried not to. They really tried not to, but they basically just took out JaVale McGee and put in Dario Saric, and that's it. It's the team. So on paper, it's a team that should be pretty good. You talked about, okay, where are we at on the three teams? Who did you decide on? Here's my decision. I'm out. I'm out on the Suns, and it has nothing to do with on paper. It is everything to do with off paper. This team, to me, the locker room situation and the off-court situation stinks, and I want no part of it. Not going to get into the Robert Sarver stuff, but it's bad, and you don't want that hanging over your team or in your locker room. They did the Kevin Durant chase all summer and tried to get rid of half of their roster of guys who played in the finals a year ago. They tried to get rid of them for a different guy, and now they're stuck with them. They're stuck with DeAndre Ayton, who didn't want to be there really, who they didn't really want to have there, and now they got him, and he's there. They had the weird, bad ending to the playoffs last year. I am a Chris Paul dude. I believe in my guy, Chris. He's a great leader. I think it's something smells and it is rotten and it's coming out of the Suns locker room, and that is not source. That is just my spidey senses are saying this is bad and don't be part of it, and it could go very south.
Before this podcast, you said I wasn't supposed to let you bet this over.
Bet this that was a couple days ago, and then I recalibrated. I was looking at things like I gotta choose one of these three. Yeah. I need no convincing. I'm not betting the over. I am either a lean or a bet on the under. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah, you just told me.
I want to hear from you where you're at.
Yeah, you told me not let you bet the under on this. Don't let you get out. Okay. All right. So this was a best bet under for me last year, and I got killed on it. And of course, Suns fans let me know all about it, as they should. You know, if I basically was like, look, the number's really high. They're probably going to regress. That's what it looks like. They and the Jazz were a big reason I dug into all the Pythagorean win stuff that I have looking at the trends, is because they are the perfect example of these overall trends, which are not, 100%. It's like 55 to 60% on most of these trends. Because in 2021, the Suns won more games than they should have, and so I bet the under, and the Jazz won fewer games than they should have, so I bet the over, and both of those lost last year. And so this year I was like, I want to see like what the actual trends are, and this is what's kind of interesting. The Suns in 2021 won more games than they should have by about 4 wins. Or 1 point. I'm sorry, that's inaccurate. That was closer to last year. They won more games than they were supposed to at a greater than 75th percentile. Those teams tend to go over. Guess what? The Suns went over last year. Last season, they did the same thing again. They won more games than they should have based on Pythagorean expectation, which is your point differential versus your strength of schedule. So based off of these numbers, you wind up with the Phoenix Suns won. As I look at cleaning the glass, they won 3.1 more than they should have, which leans to an over. That's what I should do based off of this trend that I've been kind of looking at to play, is I should take a look at the over. Here's a counter, though. In the last 10 years, teams with a projection of 50 in back-to-back years, if they're supposed to win 50 or more games based off of the win total in back-to-back seasons, go 16-10 to the under in that second season, 62%. It's a high bar. People don't realize this. 50 is, honestly, Brandon, one of the biggest things I've learned in all this win total analysis is 50 is a much higher bar than we treat it as an expectation. Lots of teams win 50. It's just very rarely all the teams we think are going to based off of the win total. When Chris Paul went to the Suns in 2021, 2019, 2020, 21, everybody was like, yeah, but is he going to be healthy? He stayed healthy. In 2022, last year, we're like, okay, but is he going to do it again? And he didn't, but it was enough to where it didn't matter. They were already going to hit the over because they won so many damn games anyway. So when he got banged up, it wasn't that big of a deal. So now we're in the spot of, well, can he do it a third year? And I don't know if I want to bet on that or not, given all this stuff. The discord with the 8 stuff, I think, is really interesting. That team wanted him gone. I'm sorry. That's based off of what the trade market looked like for him, off of the people I talked to in the league, is they were open for business. They were looking to move on DeAndre Ayton. They were hoping to move him in a deal for Kevin Durant, and the Indiana Pacers forced his hand. The Brooklyn Nets did not cave to KD's demands, did not just trade him to the team he wanted to go to, and the Pacers were like, look, man, we gave you a month. We want him. We're putting the offer in. And once that happened, the Suns basically had to decide, do we lose this guy that we don't really want for nothing, or do we retain him and then figure it out later? Let's retain him and figure it out later. But now he's walking into a locker room where he obviously has problems with the coach. Not good for the whole formula. I don't know how to explain what went on at the end of that Maverick series other than the COVID stuff. I think the Sarver stuff, you're right, is probably a sticky, messy issue. But this team's still really good. They're just really, really good. And I could easily see them winning 54 games and hitting an over at 52.5, breezing through it. I can see them getting to 52 wins and being the exact same kind of team we talked about with the Warriors and hitting the under. I could see them winning 50 and hitting the under, but it's to me, if you're going to be betting this one, I think you're going to be in a sweat. And so for me, this is an absolute stay away. Have I convinced you at all, maybe, to stay away from the under?
You've convinced me a little bit. I want to talk about the defense, because the defense, so just basketball reasons now. My main reason to dislike it is the off-court stuff. I just don't like the smell of things for a lot of the reasons we both just talked about. I'm worried about the defense. I'm not totally convinced that this was this great defense that we saw last year. They finished 3rd in defensive rating. Now, they were 9th the year before, so that seems like, all right, well, they got a little better. No, they jumped from like 111 defensive rating to 107. That's a huge, meaningful jump. That's more than 9th to 3rd. And I don't really get it. What made this a number 3 defense? This does not feel to me like a number 3 defense. I think it depends a lot on DeAndre Ayton, who has improved a lot. This is not a critique of him, but if this is a dude that's going to kind of half measure on any given night and not do the whole thing, it's not great for your defense. I think there's a trade coming somewhere because they kind of have to. They forced their own hand. Most trades are going to have either Mikal Bridges or Jay Crowder going out in the trade. That hurts the defense too, because those guys are really important to what this defense is. My defense projection, I didn't push to them too far down the list, but I would be a lot more surprised if they finish 3rd again than if they finish like something around league average. And so I don't know, like I'm trying to be careful because we saw in the playoffs, the defense wasn't this great machine. And I don't want to say, okay, well, then make that the regular season, because no, it's a different sport between the playoffs and regular season. This isn't that. And I'm trying to make sure it's not just carrying over, but I have a hard time buying the metrics last year. It looks fake to me. Not that I think they're bad. I just don't think they're great. And if they're not great, now you need the offense to be great. And Chris Paul, turned 38 and can't do the thing forever. I don't believe even in the basketball product. What do you think about all the defensive stuff I just said?
So I would counter with a couple of things. One, A lot of it for them is about their coaching. Monty Williams is really good defensively. He was good in New Orleans. He was good as an assistant with the other spots. Like he's a good defensive coach. They're gonna be prepared on that end. They did add Josh Okogie, who I know that's not a name that a lot of people are gonna like rave about. That's really good depth for a wing defender. Like Okogie, especially the advanced metrics grade out very well. If you dig in, Okogie's a pretty good defender. I would say like he's impactful as a defender. So that helps. Dario Saric's return here matters a lot.
Yeah.
And there's two ways to argue it. One, they can switch more with Saric, which I think is only going to make that defense better. Teams are not going to try and pick on Chris Paul in the regular season. That's not how it works. Switching teams disrupt other teams. If you can switch, you're going to be a pretty good defensive team. The Celtics' strength a lot of times is just their ability to switch when other teams can't. The Suns can switch more. And even if they get into a situation where that's not working, guess what? Saric at small ball is probably going to goose the offense because we've seen small ball lineups traditionally. If you put 5 shooters out there, you're going to have a pretty good offense in the stretches that you run that at. They don't have to run small ball. They have bigger guys. They had Landale, who I think is actually a little bit underrated. The talent here is pretty good, in my opinion, on the defensive end. I think the big question mark is why Monty Williams loves Landry Shamet. That's a question that I have. He got way too many minutes, I thought, last year. In general, I think even if you think they're not going to be as good, the floor is going to be high, and that floor may honestly be 52. Like it just may be that even if they're slightly worse, it still gets to 52, and they still wind up going over. So
yeah, I don't think that's the floor for me. My range, I can't remember if I said the range. I have them 46 to 54 wins. So I certainly don't think that the floor is 52. Yeah. And part of that is, again, because it's similar to what I said with Golden State. I have the offense and defense both slightly lower than I think you would expect.
But this actually gets into a really interesting thing because your stuff is based off of the offensive defensive rankings because it's a stronger indicator. Like your point differential, how much you score and allow, has always been a much stronger indicator of how good of a team you are.
Yeah.
Except, Brandon, the research I've done, which has shown that the number is more heavily weighted towards you in that respect. Like they're building the number from what you're looking at too versus the actual wins. And so the wins actually relate a little bit more to what the actual outcome is of the bet. And so if we look at this, you said 46. They won 64 games last season. I can't get to a point where I think that a 64 win team with no major losses, that their floor is 18 wins lower. I can't get there. Now that I've done that analysis before and it's been off. If you're like, is this team really 7 wins worth? I get it. I just think that you have to wait a little bit more towards what the actual win total. I know this is counterintuitive for guys like you and I, because we study so much of this point differential. It's like, yeah, okay, they're winning these games, but whatever, they're actually not that good. I think that matters a lot for playoff performance. But I think for regular season wins, I think you got to be, I'm not saying to bet the over. I'm saying that I don't think that there's good value on the under.
Okay, that's fair. The stink factor with this team is the thing that I can't get the smell off of me. Now that I know, like, you know, when you're just going about your day and all of a sudden you smell something and then you can't unsmell it.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at on the Suns. Like I can't unsmell all the stuff that I smelled about the off-court stuff. And I know they're not the Jazz. And I know that's such an easy, obvious comp to be like, oh, regular season team that can't win in the playoffs. They're the Jazz. They're the new team. But I remember so many of those games. Like you were on our betcast a few times for Jazz games where you'd be watching and they'd be like, yep, where they're good. They're winning. They're up 10. They're up 15. And then it just melted down and fell apart. And you're like, what's happening with this? I don't understand. All the numbers say that everything is good, but something is off. So I told you before the podcast, I had a melt your brain exotic for this one. Here it is. Phoenix Suns to miss the playoffs, plus 1,800 at PointsBet. This is not Brandon throws it on the podcast. I'm logging it in the app. I am betting it. I bet it a few hours ago. I have the Suns, even without the stinkiness, I have the Suns projected into a 3 through 7 seed tier. That means the play-in is much more in range than they would be given possibility for. A reasonable outcome is the play-in, even if the stinky thing isn't part of it. And if it is part of it, and they're banged up after a couple long years and lots of winning, it feels to me like a team that gets to the play-in and we just assume they're going to win and get in because it's the Suns and they always win and they got Chris and Book and everyone. And it feels like a team that might kind of look at it and be like, now let's be done. Let's be done with this season. Get this season out of here. The Ayton thing, it stunk. The Sarver stuff. This team is not it. I've seen it with this team, and we are not it. 18-1. I think that number is way too long. I don't think they will miss the playoffs, but I have to play that number.
This is a better bet than your Utah Jazz to win the NBA title. This is a better bet than that. I don't hate this bet because basically what you're saying is, look, I did my projections. My projections have them in the range of possibility. The possibility is greater of that than it is than the implied percentage of the number. I get a great payout on it if I'm right. It's obviously going to be a low unit play for you. I like it. I would say just bet that and don't bet the under.
Yeah, that's where that is what I've decided. Okay. I'm gonna lean on the under, but I'm gonna lean into the under, and lean into the stink and play the 18-1 to miss the playoffs.